pebble going in the pond, a fish might change direction. A frog might jump from a leaf. As a result of that, a rabbit might run for its burrow, and a bird might take off from a tree. And the continued movement of life, due to just that one single pebble going into the pond, never stops. It has an effect that can go round the globe through generations, simply because life is movement. If we was all to be frozen, and then there'd be no life at all. So life depends on movement. Now, if the intention of the pebble going into the pond is a healthy one, if it's a healthy thought behind the throwing of the pebble, then of course its ripples, its knock-on effects will only result in happiness. Whoever it touches, whoever is affected by that one action, receives joy. And of course at the other end of the spectrum, if the pebble goes into the pond through wrath and anger, then the knock-on effects are very disturbing, and it only brings unhappiness and a lack of joy. And a youngster, a little bit older than our Lauren here, a week ago, while I was in Sussex, asked me, "What is that in your hand?" And may I, Lauren, for a moment? Thank you, darling. And I allowed her to hold it and spin it, and I explained that this top half came from the land of the snows. And I told this wonderful, beautiful little girl the story of how the Yeti lived in the Himalayas. And the questions that came back were enchanting. And then she asked me, "Where does the handle come from?" And I said, "Well, that comes from B&Q." But the principle, you see, that this prayer wheel disturbs the air. It sends out ripples in the air. And how wonderful when this young girl, standing there with her mother, she understood. She was only 8 years of age, but she understood that if you keep spinning that wheel, eventually it will move the air throughout the universe. And even a wow could feel a draft run by its ear and not be disturbed by that, because the wow would know it was only me and I'm wishing it well. And so the young girl said, "And an elephant?" And I said, "Yes, and an elephant, and a fish, and a goat, and my mum." And she understood that what she was sending out was pure intentions. Now, in our own lives, we have aspirations for world peace. But as we were talking last night in Newton Abbot, those aspirations for world peace don't really mean too much if they just hang like an empty windsock. That aspiration needs a little bit of energy from each of us, just in order that the aspiration has got enough strength in it to start bringing about change. Now, I'm only speaking about myself at the moment because I quite enjoy winter coming on, but I can't think of anything better, with the dark nights drawing in, being too cold to pop out for a walk down the seafront, where we can get ourselves a lovely warm blanket, a lovely cosy corner in our homes, and we can sit down with a nice pad and different pens and start to study the works that we aspire to live by. Whether it be the Buddha Dharma, whether it be the teachings of Buddha or the teachings of Jesus or whoever it may be, we can collect together a small library of truly informative works, and we can spend those winter months reading a little bit, contemplating what we've read, making notes on what it is that we're going to change within our own lifestyles, and starting to implement that practice in life. And as the beginning of the new year comes on, as spring starts to come around, we'll find that we're a completely different flower. We're not the same person that we previously were, that our study over the winter months has made us more rounded, more patient, more tolerant, kinder individuals. And the aspiration for change must come from inside, and quite often it arises because we're unhappy. And so if we went to a doctor and said, I'm feeling a little bit unhappy, he might say, we'll take some tablets then. But if we go to our spiritual teachers and say we're a little bit unhappy, they may say, well, practice a bit of joy. What else would you do? And so we then become the instrument, the pebble if you like, that drops into life generally and sends out ever rippling waves that touch so many people, so many situations, so many institutions, with an effect that runs across generations. The kinder we are to the little ones, the kinder they are to their little ones, and so it goes on. And so that's the story of the prayer wheel. There's a saying in the Himalayas, and we've probably all heard it now. It was first written about by a dear friend of mine, Sogyal Rinpoche, who wrote the very successful book, the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. And he mentions in that book that a butterfly that flutters its wings in the Himalaya will eventually affect the weather in California. And so we must think of our own selves, our thoughts, our speech, and our actions.